Welcome to Thai PBS World Talk. The Israel-Hamas conflict has been raged on for about 2 weeks now. It started with Hamas attack on the 7th of October, while Israel launched counter-offensive, and it resulted in humanitarian crisis on the ground. The burning questions are whether this war will spill over into other parts of the region and whether there's a path to peaceful coexistence between Israel and Palestine. Today, I seek insight from Israeli and Palestinian journalists to show their perspective on this burning issue. I begin with asking Yousef Alhelou, a British-Palestinian journalist who joined us from London. Thank you very much, Mr. Yousef Alhelou, for joining me. What's the latest information from the ground that you have got so far in Gaza?
The situation is very dangerous. Israel continues with its unallowed war on the besieged territory, where 2.5 million Palestinians are being terrorized day and night. With the daily power cuts and shortages of drinking water and lack of the internet service, inability to go and stock up supplies and food, it's miserable. I couldn't speak with my family for a few days. Luckily, last night I managed to speak to one of my brothers, and he said, "We hate the night. Each night we survive this aggression on Gaza. It is a miracle." I know how it feels to be targeted as a civilian. They're telling me no one is immune from these targeting attacks by Israeli occupation forces. Paramedics were attacked. Rescue teams were attacked as they were rushing to rescue the wounded. They are telling me, and also I'm a journalist, by the way, so I know what's going on. Over 1,000 Palestinians are still trapped under the rubble. Some of them are alive. And seeing those images in light of the silence of the international community who say Israel has a right to defend itself, it's just outrageous. Civilians are being killed and massacred. Why it's okay for Israel to kill civilians? Why the world intervened when Russia invaded the Ukraine? Why Palestinian blood is achieved? Why we are being treated as subhumans? It's not acceptable that the world, remains silent while these massacres are being committed. The situation is deteriorating.
And what's the possibility of people living in the north of Gaza to evacuate to the south? That's the directive of Israel from last Friday. What's the possibility that they can really do so? And will it help?
Well, tens of thousands of them, they already left when they received these leaflets from the air. But as some of them were making their own way to the south of Gaza, a civilian convoy was targeted, and over 30 Palestinian civilians were killed, including women and children, and in addition to tens others wounded. So some of them, the vast majority, they returned to their houses to the north and Gaza City, because they say, if we are being promised to be safe and evacuated already and we are targeted, no, we would rather die in our houses. There are no red lines. So Israel is deceiving the world. If you ask the Israeli officials, they will tell you that we are giving Palestinians a chance to leave. But ask those Israeli officials, do you really believe your own words? Why are you targeting civilians? They don't believe you. I mean, we never trusted the Israeli assurances.
On the other hand, from Israel's point of view, they said Hamas are using children, women as human shields. What's your take?
If Israel claims to be the civilized country and the only democracy in the Middle East, and it has the latest technology, it should make the battle with the fighters, not with the civilians. So when an Israeli army appeared on CNN and the anchor asked him, why you are doing this war, is it against Hamas? He said, no, this war is not only against Hamas, it's against the civilian population. So Israel is killing civilians intentionally in order to mount a pressure on the resistance, mainly Hamas, to return the hostages. So Palestinian civilians are paying a heavy price. It's not acceptable that Israel attacks civilians in flagrant violation of the international law, when they cut electricity, food, and drinking water. This is a war crime. So Israel should focus on combating the Palestinian resistance groups, not attacking civilians.
What's the difference between Hamas and Palestinian people, and who should represent the fight for Palestinians?
Hamas is part of the Palestinian people. They are a resistance group. Hamas wouldn't have existed if Israel doesn't occupy Palestinian land. Hamas is a reaction to 75 years of aggression, bombardment, besiegement, arresting over 5,000 Palestinian political prisoners, ethnically cleansing Palestinian villages in 1948, making the vast majority of Palestinian indigenous refugees. So when Hamas was democratically elected, the whole world boycotted Hamas, including the secular Fatah party.
In your opinion, what's the workable solution between Israel and Palestine? Is two-state solution workable?
I don't think so, because Israel killed the two-state solution anyway. Israel is making it very difficult for the Palestinians to establish their country in lands occupied in 1967 because it grabbed more land, it annexed more land. It is making Palestinian lives miserable. Some Palestinians were forced to flee. Israel is controlling the resources of Palestinians. And because of the inaction of the international community, this option is not viable. Israel refuses one-state solution, two-state solution. It refuses any solution. It just wants the Palestinians to evacuate and lead and flee. Palestinians lost faith in the so-called international community. They lost faith in the so-called peace process. But they know that they will not be able to wipe Palestinians. They know that there will never be stability in the Middle East without a just solution to the Palestinian problem and allow millions of refugees to return back.
Regarding the situation on the ground, how do you see the vulnerable situation of the borders between Israel and Lebanon, Israel and Syria? Do you see the situation will escalate into wider conflicts for the whole region?
Well, the Lebanese authorities or the Lebanese resistance, they say that we are not willing to stay idle and see Palestinians slaughtered day and night. Israel accuses Iran of being involved in what's going on by supporting the resistance groups in Gaza. And we know Hezbollah is a proxy arm to Iran. You have the Syrian regime also is being supported by the Iranian regime. So it's hard to tell if it's going to be a regional conflict. But the US administration has sent warning messages to leaders or countries in the region that do not intervene. Otherwise, we will attack you. So I don't think it's going to include other countries, but this depends on the developments inside Gaza. What's important now is that Israel must stop its killing and targeting of civilians. More people are being killed hour after hour. Hospitals cannot cope with the big number of casualties, and to attack civilians and justify that, it just outrageous.
As far as you can see as of now at this very juncture, do you see any country can play mediating role between Israel and Hamas?
Well, I cannot think of any mediators for the time being, because if you need to be a mediator, you need to make sure that both sides abide by agreements. But we know Israel will not commit itself to implement its promises struck by any mediation. So I cannot think of any mediators, to be honest. I mean, the US may be the one who will be able to say to Israel no, but we know that's the biased stance. So maybe some countries that have normalized ties with Israel, maybe countries that has good relationships with Israel, maybe China, maybe some of the Gulf countries, maybe Turkey that has got good relationship. It's a Muslim country, has a good relationship with Israel. But again, you need to make sure that Israel will abide by those agreements. But it's hard. I can't think of any mediators right now.
Thank you very much, Yousef, for joining me, and stay safe on your trip to Gaza. Israeli journalist Ben Dror Yemini has written an article in which he addresses the ongoing conflict and expressed deep concern regarding the role of the Jihad movement in relation to Hamas. Mr. Ben Dror, thank you very much for joining me today. After about a week of Hamas attack on Israel, and we see what's the war going on right now. Can you tell me again what happened on the day that Hamas attacked on the 7th of October? What you did and where were you back then?
Okay, I think we all know that there is a problem between the Hamas and Israel. Now, it's not a problem between Hamas and Israel. It's a problem, actually, it's much wider. It's a problem with many chapters of the global jihad. And one of them is Hamas. Many people do not want to understand that Hamas is part of the global jihad. And many people think, okay, Hamas is against, occupation. There is not only occupation in Gaza Strip. Maybe people do not know. There is a blockade. I'm giving the background because it's highly important in order to understand what happened 8 days ago. It's highly important. Now, Israel actually supplied everything from electricity to water to the Gaza Strip, even if there was not even one soldier in the Gaza Strip. Israel evacuated it many years ago, almost 20 years ago. Now, the point is that the international community offered the Hamas once and again. I'm speaking about the EU, I'm speaking about the Quartet, I'm speaking about other institutions, foreign ministers from Europe. They offered them no more blockade, just enough with terror. You cannot continue with terror and ask us to lift the blockade. It's not going together. They decided, not Israel, to reject all the offers, which mean we prefer terror and we do not want prosperity and we do not want welfare and we do not want industry. No, we do not want all of that. Why? Because what we are. And to their own people, they say exactly what they are. And they say, our main goal is to exterminate not only Israel, not only Jews, but we are part of the global jihad. We want to conquer the world. And in my article, I put all the links, I want people to hear the voices of the leaders of the Hamas saying it, not me.
At this very juncture, people all over the world would like to know what's the view or how do you see difference between Hamas and Palestinians who are fighting for their own cause as well?
They are not fighting for the Palestinian cause. They are, just as an Arab writer published an article 3 days ago in France, I think it was in the Libération, a very important newspaper, and he wrote, you, the Hamas, are the enemy of the Palestinians because you are not fighting for the Palestinian cause, you are fighting for something else, which is of the global jihad, to conquer the world. Nothing to do with Palestinian demand for self-determination, which is, by the way, legitimate. And at least half of the Israelis support this kind of two states for two peoples. Unfortunately, even though if we speak about it, all the offers that were on the table in the last 2 decades were rejected by the Palestinian leadership, unfortunately. But speaking about the Hamas, it's something else. They are not fighting for the Palestinian cause. They are fighting for what? For killing more, for a genocide, as they themselves say. Now, when I say that it's not a struggle, it's not a battle of Israel and the Hamas, and I say that it's a battle of the free world and the global jihad, just bear in mind, just one thing. It's not the story of Israel and the Hamas. Wherever you have global jihad, you have death and destruction. Look at what's happening in Yemen. Look what's happening in Lebanon. Look what's happening in Syria. Look what's happening in Afghanistan. Wherever you have them. I mean, how many terror attacks we have every week? Many. About most of them, you and I do not know. You know why? Because they kill each other. The global jihad is the enemy of the Muslims. And whatever I'm saying is not against Muslims. Don't misunderstand me. I'm speaking only about this minority.
How do you see the situation in Gaza? Will it expand to other parts of the world and has become escalated?
Okay, if we zoom out, we do understand that actually it's not even the Hamas. Yes, Hamas is part of the global jihad, but the Hamas, the strings are pulled from Tehran. I mean, they give the orders. And why? What happened actually? Why in this timing they began with this kind of attack? Because they are afraid from the peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Because in the last 3-4 months, there are negotiations between Israel, the United States, and Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is going to be part of the Abraham Accords, which means that right now we don't pay attention to the fact that Israel actually is making peace with most of the Arab countries. We do not live 20 years ago. We live now. And now we have more and more countries that we have good relationship, normalization, trade, and whatever. Science. Now, they do not want it. They are afraid because Saudi Arabia is the biggest Arab country and the most powerful, and they don't want it. And they wanted to fail it. So it's coming from Tehran. So the whole idea is, let's attack the peace process, not to make peace. Let's attack because they do not want any kind of peace.
Witnessing the violence which is happening, people must be wondering whether coexistence between Israel and Palestine are still viable solution in the near future, especially on two-state solution. What's your take on this?
I do hope, for many years, and even now, I have, for myself, and I'm not the only one, we have a lot of Palestinian friends. We have, and even many officials we disagree about a lot of things, but we speak. Most of them are human beings. I don't want them to suffer. I just want them to accept the solution that was offered again and again by the international community, by Bill Clinton, by George Bush, by Barack Obama, by even Donald Trump. Again and again, the leadership, the moderate leadership said no. They rejected all the peace offer. So, but it doesn't mean that I am not criticizing my own government. I do have. Just in one word, I don't like the settlements, and not only me, many Israelis do not like it, but we distinguish between the criticism against the government, because Israel is a democracy, and yes, we can criticize the government, and the battle against the global jihad, where we are all totally united. And we should be united, not us only. I do hope that the majority in the free world will be united with us Israelis against this darkness, against this axis of evil.
In your article, you mentioned the whole world, the whole free world should stand up against Hamas. But in terms of consequences, do you see it will become like 9/11, that President George Bush back then said you are either against us or with us?
It's a very good question. No, I mean, not like other countries. Israel is not asking that soldiers will join the battle. No, it's not what we are asking. We need a moral support, which is highly important. We need a moral support from the world. We don't want this kind of people who argue against Israel and the right of Israel to defend itself. That's my problem. When I'm saying that it's a battle of the free world, I don't want anybody to fight for us. We can do it ourselves. We have a very good army, even if 8 days ago, yes, our army had some failures in defending the south, excuse me. But no, all what we need is understanding what the battle is, and understanding that it's not a battle of Israel, understanding that we are fighting against the axis of evil. That's all what we want. No, we are not creating a coalition of states. No, it's not the same. And anyway, we suffered. I mean, when you compare the population of Israel and of the United States, in this terror attack, we suffered 10 times more than what happened in the 9/11. And yet we do not ask for anything. We just ask for understanding that this is a war of the free world against the global jihad. That's all what we are asking.
Any chance of any country or any organization can play the role of mediating the current conflict?
Look, Qatar has good connections with Hamas. And until now, yes, they were a kind of mediators. And also Egypt mediated many times because high officials, mainly from the intelligence of Egypt, visit regularly in Gaza. And I guess maybe not yesterday, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but yes, they are going to be involved more and more in the upcoming days. Yes, they are going to be, I guess they are going to be involved. What will happen? Because it's not the same. It's not the same because this time Israel declared we are not willing to have rockets on Tel Aviv or on Beersheba anymore. We cannot live like that. We had enough for almost 30 years. It's time to stop it and not to let it happen again by a kind of a ceasefire when they will have all the rockets and all the infrastructure in order to continue attacking innocent civilians in Israel. No, we had enough.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben, for joining me, and thank you for your view under this very vulnerable situation, and I hope you stay safe. The humanitarian situation in Gaza has reached a critical juncture, with residents attempting to flee their homes, moving from the north to the south, all while enduring relentless attacks. Gaza as an enclave faces unique challenges. In our upcoming discussion, I asked ICRC spokesperson to shed light on this dire situation. Mr. Chris Hanger, thank you very much for joining me. You are not in Gaza right now, but you are in Geneva, in Switzerland. Can you tell me the situation on the ground, because ICRC has to mobilize support for people in Gaza, especially the situation after the hospital was attacked yesterday?
The human misery we've seen unfolding in Gaza and Israel in the last days and weeks is horrendous. People have lost loved ones. People are fleeing with nothing south of Gaza. People are in need of medical supplies, of a respite in violence, of medicine, food, water, and it's really a catastrophic situation, a humanitarian situation that's unfolding. And this is not the first time this is happening. And the ICRC, International Committee of the Red Cross, has been in Gaza for decades, and it's another round of escalation and violence that for people, they're losing everything, they're being killed, they're being injured, and it's really a dire situation. And that's why it's so important that humanitarian aid, but also additional staff from the ICRC is reaching Gaza and is able to help there.
How the situation in mobilizing support for Gaza, for people in Gaza?
Yes, so we have over 100 people in Gaza right now, and as we speak, we're actually mobilizing additional support. So we have over 60 tons of aid that are on their way to Gaza, and this includes medical supplies. You've seen the horrible images of hospitals that have been destroyed. So people are in dire need of medical supplies, but also we've mobilized a mobile surgical team that has already been in Gaza in previous escalations, but it's now on their way to help people and to help a healthcare system really, and doctors and nurses that are struggling to cope with the influx of wounded and that are desperately needing help. So that's what we're doing right now. But of course, this is only a drop in the ocean of the massive humanitarian needs that we're seeing in Gaza right now. So hopefully more aid and more staff can enter and can be able to help. But this is something that we hope is going to happen in the next days and weeks.
As far as we know, Egypt has opened the checkpoint at Rafah. Will it help in terms of humanitarian situation?
So we welcome, obviously, any agreement by parties that are involved in the negotiations where we are able to deliver aid. So anything that gets into Gaza that is purely of humanitarian nature and that can help people, get a temporary roof over their head, making sure that they get medical supplies. What about people that are not even able to flee, that are the elderly, the ones that are sick, the ones that are stuck in their home? Those people also need caring. So any agreement that is enabling humanitarian aid to enter into Gaza, we welcome this, but of course, it's what I said before, it's only a drop in the ocean and much more needs to be done.
And how do you like the international community to be aware of the violence of the crisis which is happening in Gaza?
So what I said in the beginning is it's not the first time this is happening. This has been a repeated cycle of violence, which is devastating for both sides, for the communities that have been suffering. We cannot forget that in Gaza, almost 48% of the people living there are children, and they've been growing up with nothing but violence, escalations, and they need something to look forward to. They need a glimmer of hope for the future that is not dominated by violence and fighting. So really, there needs to be at some stage in the future a political solution that needs to be found. But also what is important now is that people get immediate humanitarian aid. But then, of course, what we can also not forget is that specifically children will carry these mental scars that they've been going through from the fighting, from people being displaced. That's something that's horrible. And that's definitely something that's going to haunt them for the rest of their lives.
There is idea that probably humanitarian corridor should be built in this circumstance, but in practice, do you think it can really help?
So humanitarian corridors are, and we call them safe passage, they're one element where people can get to safety if the fighting is extremely severe, if people are trapped on or beyond the front line. So this is something that where we can help, where we can assist, but it doesn't mean that the laws of war and the Geneva Convention don't apply outside of these humanitarian corridors. What is important that people, regardless of a humanitarian corridor or not, have the right to receive humanitarian assistance. They have the right, or they must not be targeted as civilians. And so it's really important to understand that, yes, sometimes safe passages, humanitarian corridors can help bring people to safety, but it's not a magic wand that can just solve all problems. What is important is that international humanitarian law, the laws of war, apply everywhere in conflict zone. And that means healthcare facilities must not be targeted, civilians must not be targeted, and humanitarian aid must be allowed in.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris Hanger, for joining me and for your information regarding the situation in Gaza. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.